electronic generators, and we'll listen to three of the basic electronic sounds.
What's up friends, hope you all are doing well and staying creative. In this video, we're going to be looking at my track Audio Electronica, which I released on my label You Dig Records, so go check that out. And I'm not really sure exactly what the genre of this track is. It's kind of house, it's kind of breaksy, it's a little like electro-y with the bass line and stuff. Not sure, but yeah, we're gonna go through this, and if you want the project file for this track, it is on my website. Check the link in the description below. Alright, without further ado, let's get right into this. Alright, so as usual, let's take a look at the kick and bass first, because that's the foundation of the track. So the kick was just made with the Kick 2 plugin right here. I just modified one of the 909 presets. So it just gives it that, 909 is just fat. So I just edited that to give it a slightly different tonality, and then just added a bit of EQ. You could hear it without. This just gets rid of some of the muddiness of the kick, and then just a bit of compression just to tighten it up. As you might have already heard, I start out the track with this breakbeat pattern, and then eventually transition to a 4 on the floor pattern.
And we'll listen to three of the basic electronic sounds.
And then it just switches back and forth between the two throughout the track. So I really like doing that, just giving, because I love breaks and I love 4 on the floor like house and techno. So just being able to combine that gives me, it's the best of both worlds to me. So yeah. Now for the bass line, I'm using this preset called Creep Bass in Operator. And I have 3 instances of that going. So I have one version that's a little more chill, and I use that during the intro and like the breakdown. And I have a second instance of it, which is like the main bass, and the difference here is that the notes are more lengthened out, so it's giving a more of a driving pattern versus this, which you can see there's more space between the notes, it's less busy. So this one sounds like this. This bass line really gives the track a lot of energy. And then I have one more instance, which is essentially this channel right here, the main bass, just duplicated, but I'm pushing up the resonance quite high, so it's giving this like these weird harmonics, and then I'm high passing that here, and I'm just blending that and fading that throughout this section. So you just get these weird harmonics that are coming in and out, and it's just these little textures on top of the bass.
In time with the electronic sound. In time with the electronic sound.
And then on the main bass, I have this LFO that's linked to the cutoff filter, the low pass filter frequency on Operator. So that's just slowly morphing the bass with the filter. So it's just giving it a lot of movement. Without the LFO, it's just very static. It's very boring, at least after a while. But this just gives it a nice bit of movement. And then on this less busy pattern, I have just some manual automation of the filter, just kind of going up and then down. And then you can see in certain parts, I'm blending both the bass lines together. So here, during the intro, I'm slowly blending in this main bass line till it eventually, this intro bass line cuts out, and then you just have the main bass. And then here as well, I'm doing the same thing. And you can hear that in the track as the bass lines kind of ebb and flow with each other. All right, so now onto the drums. Starting with the main snare, because there's actually a lot going on, a lot of processing to get that snare to just punch and cut through the mix. So first off, it's in a drum rack, and I'm layering 2 snares together. take a listen to that. So there's this C78 snare, which is giving more of the higher end of the snare, the sizzle, the crust, the crisp of the snare, if you feel me. And then there's this VEE snare 104. It's from a Vengeance pack. But this is like a very just like trash can kind of breakbeat, lo-fi, old school snare. But it's very powerful. And together they sound great. If I take the top one off, it's okay, but it doesn't have that sizzle. It needs a sizzle on top. And then I have this snare just to give the little accents and fills. So that's just for the layering. Now in terms of processing, I have an EQ here just to cut out some of the lower end of the snare. Some erosion, which is just to give it some grit. Erosion is just like a saturator, bit crusher. I mean, I don't know exactly what it's doing, but it's doing some distortion. So I'm doing some light distortion up in the higher frequencies. Then I have a multi-band compressor that's taking care of some of the low end again. A limiter, just to push the loudness and take off the actual peak, because you know what you'll find is if you're trying to get your track loud but still punchy and dynamic, your clap or your snare will a lot of times be hitting the limiter way before anything else in your mix, and it's good to just shave off some of the peaks of those drums, of these claps and snares. So that's why I have a limiter, which is just taking off maybe like a couple dB off the top of the snare, and then I have a clipper, which is taking off another 1 dB, and then I'm pushing the gain back up another dB. So with the clipper, you know, you're getting a little bit of some free headroom there, and that way, once it's going into your master limiter here, it's not just all the way at 0. Because watch, if I take out the limiter, then I take out the clipper, it's like, holy shit, we're already at negative 3 dB. And then once you have the kick and everything else, you're just gonna have no headroom. So that's why you have to take out some of these peaks. And then boom, now we're sitting more comfortably at negative 6. But it doesn't end there. So now going on to the reverb chain for the snare. So I've created an audio effect rack so I can mix in the dry and the wet signals of the reverb. So with this, I have my dry chain, or my dry signal, and then I have my reverb signal. And then within the reverb rack, I created another audio rack with 2 different types of reverbs. So now I can mix between the 2 reverbs. So I have a plate reverb, which is coming from Valhalla, just a very short plate to give it some, just like that air. And then, just bear with me now, I have this entire reverb chain going through a compressor just to squash some of the dynamics of the reverb. And so you're pushing up some of the quieter parts of the reverb, giving a fuller sound. And then I have that going into a sidechain compressor, and this is being sidechained to the dry signal of the snare. So the reason I do this is so that the reverb can be pushed even harder, but it's not interfering with the dry signal. So the dry snare is coming in real strong, the reverb kind of ducks out of the way, and then once that snare finishes, the reverb comes back in full blast. And then lastly, that's going into a saturator to just give the reverb some more harmonics. So that's how I can get a really big full sound with this combination of processing and layering. And then lastly on the chain is just, on the entire chain, is an EQ, just cutting out some of 4K, just because it's a little bit harsh. All right, next we have a rim shot, pretty simple. This is rim shot pattern, which I think adds a lot in the track, gives a lot of energy. It's just an 808 rim shot, not really any EQ, and just some reverb. For the hats, I have a couple layers here. I have 2 channels that are playing 16th note patterns, so this is one of them. Just a closed hi-hat, 16th note pattern right there. And for the second one, it's kind of this more wonky, glonky pattern. As you can see, it's a hi-hat, but I'm actually doing these nonsense notes. I'm putting in chords and doing some weird stuff. And it's just using this hi-hat D55, which you can find in Ableton. And yeah, then there's this more acoustic sounding open hi-hat. And I think this helps give the track a little bit more of that breakbeat kind of, and also like more of the old school type feel. Then there's these two closed hi-hats, one of them. So this is more of this is just a simple eighth note pattern. And this plays when the kick is going 4 to the floor. And then to complement that, I have another closed hi-hat, and that's just playing on the upbeat. And all these hats are being bussed into this group right here, which just has a room reverb, which is the same large wood room, and then going into that compressor and saturator. Pretty similar preset to the snare we were just looking at. And lastly, for the drums, there are 2 perk channels. So one of them is this drum rack where I just put together all these glitch like one-shots that I found. I just loaded up the whole rack with them and created this weird pattern. Just a little bit of EQ on there. And then this is just a loop. And I have a phaser on it, and then with some kickstart, which is just giving it like a pumping feeling. And then all the drums are being bussed into this group right here, which just has a bit of fab filter to take out just a hair of the high frequencies, and then a glue compressor, which is doing some parallel processing. So just a little bit of compression, a little bit of make it gain. I have this set to 35%, so it's just doing a little bit, adding a little bit of the compressed signal in, but it's mostly just the dry signal. And that's it for the drums. Now we'll take a look at the vocals. So for the vocal, I found it from an old documentary about Delia Derbyshire. She's a pioneering synth music producer from like the 60s. She was one of the first people actually creating electronic music. So there was a documentary found with her, and
The electronics.
And I just chopped up these vocals right here. And I got that just very high pass, so it sounds more like lo-fi. It already kind of sounded lo-fi because it's an old recording, but I made it sound more lo-fi. I have that going through a limiter because it's a very peaky, dynamic vocal.
The electronic sound.
And it's going through a compressor, through a multi-band EQ, which isn't really doing much, to be honest. And then it's going through a spaceship delay. Spaceship delay, it's just doing a kind of like a slapback effect, so a very short delay time with a lot of feedback.
The electronic sounds.
Without it.
The electronic sounds.
With it. And then for the second breakdown of the track, I'm using this plugin called Hysteresis, which if you've seen my videos, you've probably seen me use this. It just gives very crazy sounds and textures, so I'm using it during the breakdown to fill in the space and create some like trippiness right here.
In time, with the electronic sounds.
All these weird textures.
The electronic sounds. With the electronic sounds.
And lastly, that's just going into a reverb here. Now on to synths. So for this whoop sound, I actually got it in Ableton Clips. If you go to Clips, there's all these different sounds and like patterns and grooves and stuff. So I actually just found it in there, got kind of lucky, and just slapped on an EQ and some reverb. So that was nice. And then this channel right here, this is the PlayStation 1 startup sound. I don't know if anyone caught that. Actually, I think someone on my SoundCloud actually commented that they recognized that, which was pretty cool. I was like, yo, you're an OG. But yeah, it's just the PlayStation 1 startup sound, pitched down 3 semitones, and then this one is pitched down 5 semitones. I'm using that in the first breakdown right here, and then over here in the track. This sounds dope. The next synth I have is this funky ARP. Plays through most of the track. and starts out the track with it. And this is just from
With the electronic
this
sound.
VST called Hybrid. Just this preset called Star Glitter. And I'm playing this chord right here with the notes E, A, and B. And yeah, pretty straightforward. A little bit of EQ, just sidechaining that to the kick, and then put some reverb. And then I'm using a utility to do some fade-ins and some volume automation. The next sound is a little sample from the SimCity 4 soundtrack. This thing right here, I forgot which song it was. But yeah, this one, you know, it's scattered throughout the track. There's actually two components to the sound. There's one, that, then there's a response. And then I have this dreamy ARP, which is also made from Hybrid. That's more of a kind of a response to the other ARP. It complements it. Sounds like this. And that's Hybrid. That's the filter sign ARP preset, if you're curious. And I'm pretty sure it's that same chord. Yep, E, A, and B, in a higher octave. And I got some echo and some reverb. And the last channel in this project is just FX. So I have some sweeps and some swooshes here. Got this effects noise. Got a little swoosh. Then that's the same thing. There's this. Got a sweep. And then I think I'm just cycling between those two FX sounds. I try to keep this pretty simple. We don't have that many channels in this project. A lot of these are groups. So in terms of actual like audio channels, we probably have like maybe 25 or something. You definitely don't need a bunch of tracks to have an interesting song. A lot of it just comes down to the arrangement and having good automation and movement. Like with this track, you know, there's this main bass which has an LFO that's constantly evolving and providing that movement. There's these bass harmonics coming in. There's different bass lines, different kick patterns. And then with the arrangement, I'm just taking the couple elements that I have here and arranging them in such a way that there's always something new happening. There's a call and response. So it just feels like the track is always flowing with these different things. But in really, you know, in reality, I got like 5 synth parts, you know, and a lot of them actually repeat for big chunks of the track. But you got all these little sounds that are coming in and out that are just keeping the flow, keeping the energy, and keeping things interesting. Speaking of interesting, hope you found this video interesting. If you did, leave a like, comment below, and tell me what you thought. Subscribe to the channel, and hope to see you all in the next video. Peace.